Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Friday seminars. This week, we get the pleasure of going to the MAREMMA, the southwestern Tuscan coast. And to do that with us will be Agostino and Nicola Lenci from Fattoria di Magliano. They are outside today, so you get to be even more jealous of the view that we are missing and not able to, unfortunately, partake in for at least a little while longer. But again, thank you all for coming. They will go through the presentation for about a half hour, and then at the end, we'll open it up for questions via either the chat or you can raise your hand in the participants tab. So with that being said, Nicola, take it away.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Great to have you all here today.
So my name is Nicola Lenci. This is Agostino Lenci. We are the family who is owning Fattoria di Magliano, right down in the Maremma coastline, so the southern part of Tuscany. We're going to talk about this later to get more deeper into the geographical appellation. And now we'll give my father the show to get a little bit of introduction and a little bit of history of Fattoria di Magliano.
So I said, here we are, father and son. I am Agostino. I'm the founder of Fattoria di Magliano. A short, long story about my previous life. I'm coming from the shoe business. I was actually was a shoe manufacturer for a long time. I founded my company in 1978, and I ran the company for almost 30 years. So it was a quite important company, exporting all over the world. In the States, obviously, with major companies such as department stores, Steve Madden, Kenneth Cole, Nine West, and so on, Aldo shoes. That was the old story. And then traveling a lot all around the world, I got my passion on wine. At the evening when I was alone around the world, was nothing better but having a good bottle of wine at night. So I encouraged my great passion on wine, drinking good bottles, and I got my sommelier graduating at the end of the 80s, and my passion was bigger and bigger, and in my interest on wine, I met a lot of nice people, especially Giacomo Takis, the famous winemaker. That is the guys who invented the SUPERTUSCANs and Tignanello, Sassicaia, and all the beautiful Tuscany wines. So when I sold my company in 1996, I became on the idea to invest a little bit of my money on wine, on the wine business. So I went to Giacomo Takis' house and we spoke a little bit together, and he convinced me to buy something, to purchase something on the coast, facing the seaside. He told me, Agostino, the best way to do beautiful wines, you have to produce them close to the coast. So I went down on the Tuscany coast. I went to Bolgheri. I went down there in Bolgheri. I didn't find anything that was so nice as here in Maremma. And then I discovered Magliano. Magliano is where we are, a beautiful terrace facing the ocean, so the Tyrrhenian Sea. And we bought the land. There was nothing else than a beautiful house and the land in 1997. So we did everything here. We built the cellar, we planted the vines, we did absolutely everything. It was a big investment according to the advices of Giacomo. And we started the first production in 2001. So we started with a new wine maker. She was a beautiful lady, Graziana Grassini, because Giacomo was a little bit tired, quite old, and didn't want to be involved 100% in the wine business with us. But Giacomo tried, tasted every year all our wines. He came every year in the cellar, trying the wines and giving us incredible advices. So we started, as said, with Graziana Grassini, and the first harvest was in 2001 and 2003. We went for the first time to the Vin Italy, and we started our selling of our products. So in 2011, we converted our production into organic, and 5 years later, 2016 vintage, all our wines are certified organic. What else? We are, as said, in the southern part of Tuscany. We are 10, 15 miles far away from the coast, up on the hills, 300 meters on the hills. That means more or less 1,000 feet over the seaside, and we get a beautiful breeze coming from the ocean. So now Nikki is going more in details with the wines.
Yeah, I would like to say also that the Maremma area, it's really the deepest southern corner of the region of Tuscany. And especially, it's a very different kind of latitude comparing to the Chianti area. So you have to think something like more than 150 miles southern than Chianti. So you can imagine the microclimate, how much is different in between us and the other part of the well-known Tuscany winemaking area. So being that southern, the ripeness of the grape, it's very easy. So you get a beautiful ripeness, beautiful fruit-forward profile style of wine, and especially it's a Mediterranean corner of Tuscany. As my father says, we are enjoying the breeze coming from the coastline every time in the day and in the night. So that there is a combination in between two aspects of the wine. Fruit-forward profile and a nice structure driven by the minerality, thanks to the exposition to the coast. The Maremma area, it's a really undiscovered wild part of Tuscany, so it's pretty new in terms of marketing winemaking. So we are in a frontier land. So that means that our land is very spread out, it's very open. It's all about olive oil, it's all about farming, shipping, cheese production. We always had a big tradition of horses here in Maremma, so that's why we have the buttero, literally the Italian cowboys. So this land was made by landlords and by Italian cowboys to shipping animals, cows, horses. So you can imagine a wild part of Tuscany that is time by time converted into the production of fine wines. So here you can see that we are running from an old tradition of the Etruscan population. So before the Romans on the coastline of Maremma, Toscana, they were the Etruscan, actually the very first population able to vinify grapes into wines in Italy, even before the Romans. And then it comes the tradition of the medieval lands. So it's a mix in between big agricultural lands and small medieval villages on top of the hills, facing on the coast. One of the village, it's named Magliano in Toscana, and that's how we took the name. So when my father established the winery here, we decided to took a very identity name. Fattoria di Magliano actually means Magliano's farm. So we want to be very much related to our territory. That's our wine property recap. So I would like to say that my father started this business as a hobby, something like a retirement business, and then it grows a little bit much than he thought. Yeah, probably, yes. So now we reached 96 hectares of property. 51 are made by vines. The rest, it's all about the guest house, the warehouse, the cellar, and the property in terms of woods. We are trying to keep our production very focused into quality. So it's only about 20,000 cases per year. We could be able to produce much more than we are doing right now, but we never been focused on quantity. So we rather prefer to communicate how much Maremma Toscana can be a quality small territory in Tuscany. In 2016, we received the certification into organic, as my father mentioned before, and that was a nice turn for us, even easier, thanks to the microclimate, because we are always exposed to the coastline breeze that really cleans up all the vines and all the disease into the wine. So the humidity is not present here. Here there is a recap of our vineyards. So we owned 3 different styles of wines. They have 3 names: Tizi, Sterpeti, and Poggio Bestiale. The 3 vines are surrounding our estate sited in Magliano in Toscana in a circumference of 4 kilometers. So everything is under our control. We pick up the grapes so they can be shipped in our cellar in less than 30 minutes. But it's important to say that all the 3 vines have different altitude, different exposition to the soil, to the sun, and different composition of the soil. So Sterpeti is the central part, which is surrounding our agriturismo guest house, is the average composition of the soil, very well balanced in between sedimentary soil and clay. Poggio Bestiale, which is one of our crew, it's the most rocky one. So big white rocks from fossil origin, closer to the seaside. So we do have less production, but more structure. Tizi instead is the lower one in terms of altitude, but it's rich of sand and clay, so we can produce more quantity. And it's important to say that even for the 100% of single grape, we do blending every vintage. So we plant the same grape in the 3 different vines, and then we do the blend every year according to the vintage. So we can play a little bit around with those. Here you can see a little bit of our soil. So as I mentioned, it's about a well balance in between clay and sand. But as you can see, big white rocks from fossil origin, because we are so close to the coast that in the past, the region was marsh. So when it was cleaned up, you can even find shellfish in our rocks, in our soil. So the roots, they can really go deep to get the water nutriments and the mineral nutriments deeper in the soil. Here, there is a nice picture of our single vineyards, Poggio Bestiale. So I think that with this image, you can have a taste of the Maremma Toscana bite. So I don't know if you can see right now behind of us, because it's pretty windy, there is a small mountain here. That's the peninsula in front of us called Argentario Peninsula. So it's literally a terrace facing on the Mediterranean coastline. So as you can imagine, Toscana wines are really made by structure, but thanks to the microclimate, we do have a nice mineral profile. So the structure is really driven by the minerality. To be simple, I like to describe the wines of Maremma Toscana as a crossover in between old world and new world. Because as you can imagine, in Tuscany, we have structure, tannins, freshness, but also the fruit forward profile that the new world customers are willing to find in modern wines. So I think that even for people who are not familiar with old world wines, they can become thanks to the Maremma Toscana characteristic. Talking about our facility, now we are presenting our cellar. This is the first ground of the cellar where we do have the warehouse and the bottling line, and it's built with the same materials we have found in the fields. So when we started to plant the vines, we moved all the soil, we found big rocks, and we used the same rocks to build the cellar. Then we have an underground area, underground area where we are keeping the real part of the cellar. So when we do the vinification and the aging. So being underground, it makes us able to control temperature and humidity in an easier way and spending less energy. So that's our image of the stainless steel vats of our underground cellar. So all of our production, white wines and red wines, are vinified in still a controlled temperature. But there is a particular aspect of our aging: cement vats. So why we are using cement? Because we want to show how much our territory can be different from the other part of Tuscany, especially with the indigenous grape. As you can imagine, the Sangiovese is the king of the grape in Tuscany. But our Sangiovese, it's so ripe and so fruit forward that we want to show it with the unique profile of itself. So we decide to don't use any oak, to don't add anything to enlarge the structure of our Sangiovese. By using the cement, we can point out the uniqueness of our microclimate and our terroir. Why? Because the cement does not release any extra flavor to the wine, but it keeps our Sangiovese very bright. So the cement, it keeps a little bit of micro-oxygenation that helps the fruit to express very fragrant. In the same way, keeping the freshness very, very bright. So that's the way to enlarge the characteristics already present into the wine in a neutral way. So we want to be recognized not only as Tuscan winemaker, but mainly as Maremma Toscana winemaker. But we are also using barrique. So the versatility of the territory, thanks to the composition of the soil, is testified by the French grapes used here. Because the French grapes, the international grapes, are showing very vocated, thanks to the soil, to the rockiness. And the modern touch of Maremma Toscana is let us able to produce unique international style of wine. So for the international grape, we are dedicated barrel aging. Small French barrique, medium toasted oak, averaging between 1 year and 18 months, is depending from the product we want to produce. The 80% of our barrels are used. So from the second to the fourth passage, just to keep the influence of the oak very low in terms of taste. As a wine producer, we want you to taste the wine, not really the oak. So the oak has to be a tool to get the wine expressed at the best. We do have also a very nice tasting room where we dedicate our moment with Graziana Grazzini, our enologist, where we do the blend anytime. So we taste different lots, so we taste different parcel, we taste different grapes, and then we do blending. Here you can also see two big pictures, two big painting. So they were made by a painter, a good friend of my father that was with us to the concept of the project. And they became one of the two most representative label of our production. Well, we're going through the wines later, so we can talk again about it. Here we got the two-star of our estate. My father, obviously, which is not only the owner, but is the founder. So the ones who had the bad idea to invest his life fortune into the wine business. So as everyone already knows, probably in Italy we says, you can become a millionaire in the wine business when you start as a billionaire, okay? So she's Graziana Grassini. She's the lady who is in charge with us in terms of wine making.
Since the beginning.
Actually, yes, since the beginning, since the 2001 vintage. So we are very close into celebrating our 20th anniversary in terms of winemaking, which is very good for a winery to be that stable. And it's a family business, father and son. As you can see over here, we are running the estate together. My father is taking decision, he's the boss, and going around the world to sell the wines, especially overseas. So probably I met some of you in the market. And if not yet, I'm willing to meet all of you very soon, hopefully next year. One of our most representative wine, obviously, is Ebba. Ebba is our Morellino di Scanzano DOCG. So the Morellino di Scanzano is the DOCG appellation of the Maremma Toscana land. So it's the typical expression of Sangiovese in Maremma Toscana. As you know, Sangiovese can become a different DOCG, it depends where you plant it. The Morellino di Scanzano become one of the most recent released DOCG in Tuscany in 2007. We are allowed to use a minimum of 85% of Sangiovese, and for the rest 15% we can pick in between more than 20 different grapes. So we decide to use a 95 of Sangiovese, 5% of Syrah, because that's a beautiful marriage. The Syrah in our territory is growing very aromatic, not really earthy and spicy, but more aromatic and balsamic. It's interacts very well with the freshness of the Sangiovese to create an everyday style of Sangiovese. So even for the people who are not familiar with the Chianti, they can become friendly with Tuscany drinking the Morellino. Fruit-forward style of Sangiovese, a red wine from the coast that you can really enjoy with everything. It's very versatile. So it's not a wine made for special occasion, but for everyday drinking as we eat. Ebba took the name from the ancient name of our village during the Etruscan population times. So that's why we reproduce an Etruscan goddess on our front label. So we like to be inspired by our tradition, but shown in a modern way, in the labeling, but also in the winemaking. Pagliatura, it's the Vermentino. So Vermentino is becoming very strategic for our portion of Tuscan land, for Maremma Toscana, because we can consider the white wine district of Tuscany. Thanks to the exposition to the coast, to the wind, to the sea breeze, rich of saltiness, the Vermentino has time to ripe properly during the season. So thanks to our warm climate during the springtime, we get a nice ripeness, but the cool nights are getting the balance strategic. So the Vermentino is very well grown in all the region faces our portion of the Mediterranean Sea. So of course, Sardinia, Provence, but especially also our part of Tuscany. Stainless steel vat fermented, no oak aged, but just put in fine lees aging for 3 months. That's the way to keep more body and more fruitness to balance with the typical mineral aftertaste. And the third wine, which is very representative for us, if Vermentino and Morellino di Scanzano can be considered a wine for every day, this is a wine for your every evening lifestyle. So I'm not saying just once in a life, but every night, because it's a structured wine, but with a great balance. We can call it SUPERTUSCAN. We can call it Bordeaux Blend. We like to call it POGGIO BESTIALE, that literally means the hillside of the beast. It's not only because it's a beast of a wine, but because when we plant the vines in that crew, in that single vineyard, we took the name from the original name given by the farmers. They were just animals shipped around during the day, no agriculture, and in the nighttime infested by wild boar. So the people of the town already call that hill the hillside of the beast. So when we start to plant the Bordeaux blend, we said this is a very evocative name, we cannot change. And it's a structured wine, great tannins, great fruit, but very elegant as we are trying to do today. Then we are also experience other style of Sangiovese, obviously, because the 80% of our production is made by Sangiovese and Vermentino. As we mentioned, my father always had a great passion for French wines. So once in a day, we thought if we could reply the finesse of the Provençal Rosé in MAREMMA Toscana, thanks to the similar characteristic of the terroir. Hillside facing on the coast, our surrounding, it's all about Mediterranean herbs. So we think we could reply something in Tuscany looking about the finesse of the Provençal. So we do a Sangiovese 100%, only 3 hours of skin contact, so very short time. The very first pressing of the grape is dedicated to the Ilario. It's a Sangiovese with a Provençal finesse, but with the structure of Tuscany. So actually a rosé that you can even match with food. And Ilario was the middle name of my grandfather. So we decided to dedicate this unique style of Sangiovese to himself. By side, you can see Sinarra. Sinarra, it's our single vineyard Sangiovese. So if with the Heba we want to tell you the terroir of the Morellino di Scanzano, with the Sinarra we are telling you the pureness of the Sangiovese. 100% Sangiovese, comparing to our Morellino di Scanzano, it's only the 10% of production in terms of number, so more boutique. Morellino, it's for everyone, and Sinarra, it's for Sangiovese lover. What we do in difference in between the Sangiovese, Sinarra, and the Morellino is the selection in a single vineyard, where we do have less production per vines and more concentration, more structure. No oak, just steel and cement, so we are trying to get the concentration direct into the vines rather than build it into the cellar. And again, Sinarra is showing you the Etruscan alphabet on the front label. So that's why we are related again to the Etruscan tradition. And Sinarra actually means the storyteller, because we want to tell the story of our Sangiovese. Then we have our SUPERTUSCAN gems. So I already told you about the versatility of our territory. And especially for the Syrah, Giacomo Takis suggested us to plant Syrah because it has to show marvelous over here. White rocks from fossil origin, wind, the presence of the water, climate temperature according with warm day and cool nights. That's the perfect condition to get a nice ripe Syrah. But it's a very Mediterranean Syrah, so it's not about black pepper, but more Mediterranean herbs, licorice, wild mint, black olives, with a very nice blue fruit, like blueberries. That's why we have this blue image in front label, but literally it's because it's very related to the family. Agostino's father, my grandfather's name was Enzo. Per Enzo means for Enzo, a dedication to my grandfather. That was his name. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to taste the wine. And the first vintage we released, we dedicated to him. So that's why we have a cheer on the front label, and it's a blue cheer because we were cheering blue for the amount of Syrah we drank in his memory. On the right side, you can see Altizi, which is our new project. It's a Cabernet Franc 100%. So we always grown the Cabernet Franc for the Poggio Bestiale blend, which is a Merlot Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot blend. But we always vinified the grapes separately. So that's how we had the chance to taste the barrels every year. And we discovered that the Cabernet Franc was showing very uniquely, better and better. And especially very Maremma style. So it's about fruit, ripe fruit, and aromatic style. So it's not a Cabernet Franc for the Cabernet geek, but for the fine wine lover. Because it's not really showing a green pepper profile, but it's more about sage, rosemary, balsamic, all the wild herbs growing wildly and spontaneously all around our estate. And fruit, it's about cassis, raspberry, so really something unique. And we're talking about a boutique production, 600 cases per year. Now we are going through the ratings. So obviously we are not producing wine for getting ratings, but to be in an undiscovered territory, in a growing appellation, we know, it's very important to be under the light of the critics and the journalists. So we are very proud to show how much the HEBA will be very well received during the years, with more than 10 years in a row of 90 points plus. And we are talking about wines that you can consume every day. The same for Poggio Bestiale. So Poggio Bestiale probably has a beautiful international appeal, thanks to the blend, thanks to the characteristic of a SUPERTUSCAN style, but especially thanks to the drinkability of a big wine. You can see that during the years we had beautiful ratings, more than 90s as well. But even for the other wines, for the white wines, the Vermentino, for the Lario, for the Sinarra, for the Perenzo, the Syrah, but even for our newest project, the Cabernet Franc, which is just released in 2015 as a first vintage. And we received already 92 points from James Suckling. And we are talking about a Cabernet Franc in Maremma, Toscana, 600 bottles per year. So 600 cases per year, sorry. So we are talking about a project of Fattoria di Magliano, which is want to be recognized as a quality producer in Maremma, Toscana. A nice overview again about our ratings. So, I mean, it's important on the market as a selling point. And then a little bit of Maremma Toscana experience. So we are willing you to come as soon as possible, probably in the next couple of years, to have a nice bite of the wildest part of Tuscany. You can see we have a nice farmhouse, a nice agriturismo guest house in the middle of our vines, with a nice restaurant and terrace when you can taste the typical recipe of Maremma Toscana. It's all about game food, wild boar, lamb, suckling pork. So that's the best way to get the original bite of our portion of Tuscany. 14 rooms and a flat. We are actually sitting on the terrace of the flat. So you can imagine how much can be pleasant to be here and to enjoy the climate of Maremma Toscana. And a beautiful pool. Obviously, pool never gonna hurt. So I can guarantee that the Vermentino Pagliatura, it's gonna taste much better when you got your feet in the pool. As a Tuscans, we can't deny we are producing also olive oil. So we started to produce a very boutique style of, very boutique production of olive oil. Only 200 cases at the beginning was for our internal consume in a guest house. But then we discovered that it was so well received that we are trying to put it into the market, because comparing to other olive oils in Tuscany, it's very delicate, aromatic in terms of herbs, flower touch, and finesse. So it's nothing about spiciness and structure, but it's more about aromatic and elegance. And it's made by indigenous olive here in Maremma that it's called Frantoiano and Moraiolo. And that's finally the great family of Fattoria di Magliano. So we are producing wines not only in 075 sizes, but also in magnums, because we like to party. And especially before being producer, we are wine drinkers. And there are some of the OPC teams that already experienced Fattoria di Magliano staying. And I'm sure they're gonna tell you about how much we had fun and how many bottles we opened during our party time. So we are not afraid to open bottles when you guys are coming here in our estate. And that's mainly everything. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Thank you. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Alla grande.
So, yeah, thank you so much for that, just that reminder of how fantastic that place, your estate and winery is. If anybody has any questions, please feel free now to ask them, whether you raise your hand or just type it into the chat, and we will we'll have Nicola and Agostino answer them for you.
Hey, Brian?
Question for you, Nicola. When did you install the cement vats?
So actually, since 2006, we vinified the Morellino di Scanzano with the oak. But my father had nice connection in Bordeaux, in Bourgogne, sorry, and he always been fascinated by the eggs, the small cement eggs that the people are using there for aging. So we bought some of these eggs to test, and finally in 2008, we released the very first vintage of Morellino di Scanzano aged in cement. And we discovered that in that way, the Morellino di Scanzano really shown the uniqueness of itself. So that was our fascination into get more related not only to the Sangiovese, but to the Morellino di Scanzano. More brightness, more fruit, more approachability. So we don't want to be approached only by people who are familiar with Tuscan wines, but for everyone who wants to experience a nice bottle of red wines for everyday consume.
Okay. The next question: Are you doing any specific production in the eggs?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we do aging in the eggs for all of our Sangiovese, for the Morellino di Scanzano and for the Sinara as well. And now we are also doing new projects. So as you could see, we just released the Altizi, but also in the cement eggs, we are testing indigenous white grapes of the area called Ansonica. So the Ansonica, it's a unique style of indigenous white grapes with a thick skin, great structure, and it's all about dry yellow fruits, honey touch, nuttiness. And in the cement eggs, we released this year the very first production of 1,000
natural fermentation.
natural fermentation, you're right. And also macerated for 100 hours on the yields. So that's how we want to rediscover our tradition of farm winemaking.
Okay. A question from a collector. They said they have the last couple bottles of 2010 Poggio Bestiale in their cellar. How much longer do you think they can keep them there before they open them?
As long as you want, as long as you are able to don't drink it.
At least 5 years more, at least.
Yeah.
But no doubts, even longer.
I would say that the natural aging for the Poggio Bestiale to get perfection, it's in between 20, 22 years. So I think now could be ready to drink, but not mature. So don't be afraid to waste the bottle.
Another question about the Poggio Bestiale. Does the blend change year to year, or does it pretty much stay mostly?
Yeah, so the tradition of the Bordelais, it's always the technique of vinified and aging the grapes separately. So that's the way that we can taste each barrels every year and do the blend every year. So we are not that tied to the characteristic of the vintage, but we can change for a small percent the blend to follow the same style every year. So we want to be very respectful to the identity of Poggio Bestiale. So we don't want to be strict in terms of percentage.
I can say that in the last 3-4 years, we have a little bit more percentage on the two Cabernets rather than on Merlot.
Yeah, probably at the beginning when the vines were a little bit younger, the Merlot helped us to get more roundness and more richness. But time by time that the Cabernet are getting older, they're showing much finesse.
Yeah.
So we reduce a little bit the Merlot to enlarge more Cabernet Franc and so on.
Yeah, I think that in terms of international grapes, the Cabernet Franc is the one that is showing nowadays better than the other.
And that's why we started with the Altizia too.
Okay. Top 3 selling points for Heba versus a Sangiovese from Central Tuscany.
Top selling points for me is that the Heba, it's a fruit-forward style of Sangiovese. So it's juicy, it's approachable, and it has very smooth tannins. Also because the skin of the Morellino di Scanzano clone, it's a little bit thinner. So it's naturally contains less tannins. And even the way of vinification that we are using is tending to enlarge the aromatic profile and the fruit. At the same time, we enjoy the Mediterranean climate. So the Morellino di Scanzano is ready to drink now. You don't need to wait 2, 3, 5 years.
But it's still aging very well.
Because of the natural tannins and the acidity driven by the minerality. So as I mentioned before, I love Chianti and I drink Chianti very often. But with the Morellino, you can hit a much various crowds, even for someone who are not familiar with the Sangiovese. My perfect customers when I travel overseas to challenge is the one who told me, Nicola, I don't like Sangiovese. So you'll probably like the Morellino di Scanzano.
Quick question about the labels for the Poggio Bestiale and the Parenzo. Who's the artist who made the paintings, the labels?
The artist is called Mauro Lovi. So probably is not internationally well known. He's an architect from Lucca, but it's also a painter, a designer too. So he was part of some other our projects in our hometown Lucca when we were investing a little bit into the buildings, houses, villas. He's a great designer, and when my father had the idea to invest into the wine business, he invited him to come here and to interpret the feeling of our production, philosophy, and also about our family characteristic, profile. So on the Poggio Bestiale, you can see the painting showing the silhouette, the profile of the Poggio Bestiale single vineyard with the two typical colors of the hill. The very warm sun, so much Bordeaux style, much red, and the rocky, austere soil, very dry with a nice yellow color. And as I mentioned before, the Perenzo label, the blue label, it's about the missing of our grandfather.
Okay, and then lastly, real quick, because we're up against the time here, what do you use to find the wines, and are they vegan?
Our wines are not only organic, but also vegan, so we don't use anything anything like fish glue or eggs or something like that. So we stabilize the wine only with stainless cold temperature. So thanks to the coldness temperature, we do the stabilization of the wines. That's a technique that originally was used only with the white wines, but we experimented during the years and it works very well with our reds. So we don't need to use anything related to clarifications of stabilization of animals' products.
Okay. Well, thank you guys again. This was terrific. Thank you for giving us a beautiful view, not just you guys, but the scenery behind you. Hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe. That goes for everybody else who joined us today. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon, all.
Thank you very much, guys. We appreciate it.